The rain was relentless that Thursday evening, drumming against the tin roof of Tony's auto shop. Tony, a burly man with grease-stained hands and a quiet demeanor, was shutting down for the night when he heard the screech of tires followed by a sharp crash. Peering through the rain-streaked window, he saw a car skid violently, flipping over on the wet asphalt. Without thinking, he grabbed his first aid kit and ran out, the rain soaking through his jacket. By the time he reached the wreck, a young policewoman was trapped inside, conscious but in shock. Her badge glinted dimly in the downpour. Tony didn't hesitate. With trembling hands, he pried open the door, dragging her out just as smoke began to curl from the engine. He murmured words of reassurance, checking her pulse, stopping the bleeding, until the ambulance sirens pierced the night. The next morning, Tony returned to the shop, wet and exhausted, only to find a termination letter pinned to the wall. His boss, furious that Tony had abandoned his post, had fired him on the spot. "You're reckless, Tony. This isn't a charity." Tony barely had time to process the words when the first patrol car rolled down the street. Then another, then 10, lights flashing, sirens echoing off the brick walls, officers jumping out with urgency in their eyes. The policewoman from the accident. Officer Lane stepped forward. Her face was pale, but her gaze was fierce. "You saved my life," she said simply, her voice steady despite the chaos. "And now it's time someone stood up for you." Tony's heart raced. Questions, doubts, fear, everything collided inside him. He looked at the flashing lights, the officers surrounding the shop, and then at the woman whose life he had pulled back from the brink. A detective approached, holding a file. "Tony Russo," he said. "We need your statement, but more importantly," he hesitated, a subtle smile forming, "we also need to make sure what happened last night doesn't go unnoticed." Tony's boss appeared at the doorway, red-faced and stammering. For the first time, Tony didn't feel small or powerless. The crowd of officers, the media cameras gathering in the street, and the quiet pride in Officer Lane's eyes shifted something inside him. Somewhere in the tension, Tony realized that actions, even small ones, could ripple far beyond the moment they happen. And as he stepped forward, rain still dripping from his hair, he sensed that life was about to hand him a reckoning he hadn't expected. The storm outside had eased, leaving a strange, heavy calm. Tony wiped his hands on his jacket, looking at the crowd, the flashing lights, and the woman whose life now intertwined with his own in ways he couldn't yet understand. And for the first time in a long while, Tony felt truly seen. Tony stood in the doorway, watching the officers confer quietly. Officer Lane stepped closer, holding a small envelope. "This is from me," she said softly, "for what you did and to make sure you're recognized." Inside was a letter of commendation from the police department praising Tony's bravery and quick thinking. But more than the recognition, there was something else. Handwritten notes from the family he had indirectly saved that night. Notes of gratitude, of hope, and of appreciation for a man who had acted selflessly when no one else could. The media gathered, recording his story. Tony's boss, still glaring, seemed to shrink under the weight of public admiration and respect directed at Tony. But Tony didn't gloat. He simply smiled, looking at Officer Lane. "I just did what anyone would have done," he said humbly. But everyone who witnessed it knew it was more than that. It was courage. It was humanity. And it reminded them that acts of kindness, no matter how small, could create ripples far beyond what one could imagine. Weeks later, Tony's shop reopened, this time under new management, and business boomed. Customers came not just for his skill, but for the story of a man who put others before himself. Every time he fixed a car, he remembered the woman trapped in the rain and the lives that could have been lost. Tony realized something profound. True heroism isn't about recognition. It's about the choice to act with compassion, even when the world doesn't notice immediately. And sometimes the kindness you give comes back in ways that lift not just others but yourself. As the sun broke through the clouds that morning, shining on the slick streets and the glowing city skyline, Tony felt a warmth in his chest. It wasn't about the fame, the letters, or the cameras. It was the simple, unshakable truth. One selfless act can change the world, one life at a time. And from that day on, Tony vowed to live by that truth, knowing that kindness had a power all